So this next session is all on reimagining workshops, and Cristina and Iris are going to walk us through it and kind of share with us what they've learned. So Cristina is an associate director of product experience and delivery at Frog. Sorry, long title. That sounds sounds like a really good one. She has 10 years of experience helping clients identify opportunities and define solutions and launch products to market. So that's like a lot of stuff to be doing, a lot to coordinate. She's a human-centered product leader that has successfully led several of Frog's largest digital transformations and programs across many industries. So sounds like Cristina's got a great amount of experience across a whole bunch of different situations, which I'm sure comes in handy for these remote workshops. Iris is a customer success manager at Miro. She describes herself as being customer obsessed, which sounds like a perfect match for that job. She comes from a design consulting world as a strategic designer and facilitator, and she now works to build out the customer insights function at Miro. So also seems like a really great background to have for this idea of reimagining workshops. So welcome both of you to I guess the remote design week stage, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have in this workshop.
Thank you, Val and Preet, and thank you for having us today. So I'm gonna kick off our session. I'm very excited today to be partnering with Miro on this presentation, and we're gonna talk about reimagining workshops in a virtual world. And so as we go into the workshop, I'm gonna walk you through different strategies for how you can plan, facilitate workshops, and what do you do after a workshop. There are a lot of skills that we have as facilitators that translate really well, be it an in-person or remote workshop. But there are a few nuances and challenges that we're facing, not only just in a virtual remote environment, but also in our current environment where we're dealing with everyone's working at home. You know, we've got kids, we've got dogs, we've got a lot of things happening. So how do you really plan and conduct a workshop and still engage and foster human connection and make everyone feel like you're making progress towards your goals? So I'm going to talk about, for about 30 minutes or so, and then I'm going to hand it over to Iris from Miro, and she's going to show you different tools that you can use in Miro to help facilitate the workshop. We're going to have a little activity at the end, so hopefully it'll be fun and dynamic for everyone, and then we'll open it up to Q&A if anyone has any questions. So I'm going to share my screen. A second. Okay. Got it. Hoping everyone can see my screen. I'm going to go on full screen. Okay. So reimagining workshops. I think, as we start to think about how do we reimagine workshops in a virtual environment, I think the biggest question that I think a lot of people have is, how can we build skills that work really well in our current environment and our current stay-at-home scenario, but also, there are strategies that you can use in the future and maybe enable new ways of working and collaborating with our clients. And so it's not just about like, what do we do right now, but what do we do like in the future? And how does this, this environment help us become better facilitators with our clients? Thanks, Val, for giving a little bit of a background. I am an associate director of product experience delivery at Frog. And what that means is, we take a very human-centered approach to agile product delivery. And I've helped lead Frog, some of the largest digital transformation programs at Frog across many different industries, from healthcare to transportation, B2B, enterprise software, insurance, maintenance as well. And so my job as a product leader is to help our teams and our clients go from research all the way to implementation. And in that process, we have a lot of different workshops. And I'll walk you through, what are some workshops that we do in the different stages of work, and then how do we work with our clients to make sure that every step of the way is building towards a greater goal. Before we get started, I just wanted everyone to understand our definition of workshops and just to align on what we're talking about. And so workshops are an opportunity to structure a collaborative design process that we bring our most important partners into, our clients and our stakeholders. Sometimes we also bring in our users into workshops, and that can be a great way to engage with participants as well. And so as we think about what workshops are, the biggest whole goal is creating a shared journey to build shared understanding. And so a lot of times as designers, our process can be very complex and ambiguous, and our clients might not be as familiar with that process. So we use a workshop to bring them into that journey. We go on a journey together to build buy-in, consensus, teach them how we think, so that their organization can start thinking a little bit more creatively as well. And so slowly we start enabling their teams to take a design thinking mindset to problem solving. And so we learn and get input from stakeholders. I think a lot of times as designers, we're not experts. We look to our clients to provide us expertise on their industries, their products, and their services. So we're really open-minded when we go into a workshop, and we're just like sponges. We're trying to learn their world so that we can design our future. We also use workshops to generate new ideas and concepts. Sometimes we provide organizational therapy. And so going into a workshop is really important to know who's involved, who are your decision makers, where there might be conflicts within different departments in an organization. And so we use this to help their teams connect and be able to work together as well. And then we also co-create. And so it's important that us as designers, we're not designing in a vacuum. We're bringing our clients along the journey so that they feel like they've contributed to the design process and they've contributed their ideas. There are different types of design workshops that we lead. This is just a high level view into some of the main ones that we have. We always start with a program kickoff, and this is an opportunity to bring the clients and the teams together. They get to know each other. We set a vision. We onboard and we talk about, what does the Gantt look like? What's the process for the next few weeks and months? What are the biggest milestones in the process? We align on scope. We set expectations. We want our clients to share their expectations with us, and we share our expectations from them. How much involvement do we need from them? What do we need from them on this program so that it can be successful? And this is a really great way to kickstart a program by bringing everyone together and just aligning on a vision and scope. It's also a good way to start building rapport with the people that are going to be working together for weeks or months. Another great workshop that we do is the concept ideation workshop. And this is like after we've conducted research or design research, we've identified insights and opportunities. And now we're going to try to come up with concepts that align with the opportunities and address the pain points, the needs, and the desires of our users. And so this is a fun one to do with our clients, and it's quickly sketching out ideas. And so based on what we heard in the field, based on the insights that we heard and the pain points, what are some concepts that can address those solutions? And it's important to bring different teams together here, cross-disciplinary teams, from operations to technology to strategy to design, bringing everyone together because everyone's going to have a very different point of view. And it's really fun to see the ideas that emerge because everyone's looking at it from a very different perspective. And so we have these workshops to quickly ideate. And a lot of times we assess the concepts that come out, we do mashups, and then we start prioritizing concepts. What are different areas of opportunity that we might want to address? Another one is a service design workshop. And once we understand a concept, we start to flesh out what are all the different pieces of a concept, and then what is the service that is required to deliver on that experience. And so who do we need from sales? Who do we need from customer success? Who do we need from operations? What are all the different stakeholders in a workflow? And what are the systems that these groups need? What is the talent that's required? What is a culture, change that we might need to address? Because, maybe today, teams don't talk to each other. Maybe, they're following really rigid structures that stifle innovation and design thinking. So we really use a service design workshop to think through an experience and think through all the changes that need to happen at an organization to manage the complexity and plan the ecosystem. And then once we've identified a concept, and sometimes it's more of a vision in the beginning, we start to flesh it out. Okay, what does it really mean? What are the different features? And we start planning for a release. So, be it an alpha, a beta, an MVP release, we start planning what is that milestone and what is that combination of features that are differentiating and also baseline that we need to address in this first release or iteration of a product. And so in the product planning meeting, we refine the vision, identify experience principles, what is our prioritization methodology, and we start to go ahead and prioritize and set a plan for executing on a product. And so these are some of the main workshops that we lead. Obviously, there's so many other ones, but I think it's important for us to have a good context on, what are all the different workshops. And, as hopefully you can see, it's very clear that all of these require groups of people working together and groups of people from different disciplines that have very different perspectives coming together to make progress. Our workshops typically look like this. We've got a lot of people gathered together. We've got whiteboards, we've got Post-it notes, we've got Sharpies and concept car sheets, and we're moving around the room. So they tend to be very fun and interactive and engaging. Our clients love it when we have workshops because we're bringing them into the process. We print posters, and a lot of times, we're traveling in airports with tubes with our posters because we're carrying all the assets to our client site. And so, obviously we can't recreate this environment right now. So how do we do this? How do we create the same energy and passion and excitement around a workshop? And how do we bring everyone together? Which is a little bit harder now that we go into remote environments. And one thing, I'm going to talk about different strategies across the different phases of a workshop, but be it in person or remote, a good workshop has three things. You've got to have a clear purpose. What is the desired outcome of your workshop? What are the goals of your workshop? What do you want to get out of it? Why are you running it? So having a very clear purpose and having your team aligned on that goal and that purpose, and also the client aligned on that, is critical before you start doing any planning. And then what is the framework that you're going to be using? What are the rules of engagement? What are the activities? And how do the activities build on each other to achieve your goal? And so having a clear, organized framework is important going into a session. Sometimes we have a lot of different activities and we want to do, but we might want to hone it in. What are the key pieces of activities, and how do you make it as simple for participants to follow your thought process? And then lastly, flow. And so a good workshop has a balanced agenda. And so thinking about how long should your workshop be, which might be shorter now that we're remote. What is the length of that workshop? When are you starting? Are you starting in the morning where energy levels are high? Are you starting after lunch where energy levels are low? And what are the activities that you're going to build in your agenda so that you have flow throughout the day or the time duration of the workshop? You might not want to build two intense activities back to back. You might want to have an intense activity, take a break, go through content, another intense activity, and then take a break. So you really want to create a storyline through your workshop and make sure that it has really good energy and really good flow of content and activities. So, these are three, clear ways of making sure that, you are preparing and planning a good workshop. You have to think about purpose, framework, and then flow. And so when designing workshops, you've got three main stages: the planning and preparation, the actual workshop where you're facilitating activities, and then what happens after the workshop. How do you translate the workshop outputs into action? That's, all of these three are really important. So when you're preparing and planning a workshop, this is when you're gathering information from the client, from the teams, from the problem, from the industry, what are we doing and what do we need to accomplish? Why did we decide to do this workshop? And so making sure that, once you're planning, you're bringing everyone along on that process. What happens during the workshop? This is when your planning comes together with participants, and you have shared knowledge that is gathered and built among the team. And then after, we do workshops for a reason, and this is where you really take the workshop results and realize outcomes. It wouldn't be an effective workshop if it didn't lead somewhere. And so you have to share back with your clients and your teams, okay, this is why we did this, and this is what we're going to do with this information. And so I'm going to go through these 3 stages and share a few tips and strategies that could be helpful for you as you're going into a workshop. And so planning a workshop, it's a design effort. I've talked about these already, but the outcome is top of mind, making sure that you have clear focus areas, methods, and facilitation, that you identify workshop participants. And, this one, you really have to work with your client or your organization to understand who needs to join this session, who are our stakeholders, who are decision makers, who are going to be the loudest voices in the room, who are stakeholders that might not be getting along, that we might need to be careful about, when we go into a session. So understanding ahead of time where there might be tension and how do you alleviate the tension and bring different teams working together. You're going to start creating, once you have your framework and your agenda, you're going to create your visual assets. So what are the activities that you're going to build, be it physically or digitally, to lead your workshop? And then you're going to prepare logistics. This one is not as important in a remote environment. When we think about event logistics, a lot of time is, what is the location? When does the team need to arrive? Are we going to have any breakfast or snacks or lunch? Or, if, the client needs to take a break, where do they go? Or where your team needs to take a break. So, usually we're thinking about all of this to make sure that, everything goes smoothly. It's not as important in a remote environment, but you still have to think about tools. So what are the tools that we're going to be using for a workshop? Are we going to be using Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Slack? Are we going to be using Miro that we're going to talk about today? What are all the different assets? And then when do I need to start sharing these assets with the clients so that they know, like, okay, do I need to create an account? Do I need to have an app installed? What do I need to do before I get into a workshop? And then making sure that you build breaks into the agenda. This one is something that, we hammer in when we're planning an in-person workshop. It's even more important, we realized over the past few months, how breaks are critical in a workshop. You need to allow people the opportunity to take a break, pause, get water, go to the bathroom, work with their children, prepare lunch for their children. So I think breaks are even more important. It's not as easy to just say just step out of the room and grab water or go to the bathroom. You have to really plan for these events. And then doing a dry run. I can't say enough about this one, especially if it's a new workshop that you maybe have never run before, or your team has not run before. Doing a dry run and making sure that everyone knows their talking points. When are they going to be engaging? Do they need to facilitate an activity or moderate an activity? You just want to make sure that you're as prepped as possible going into this session. And so, designing starts understanding goals. What does the client need and expect? What are their expectations and what can you do to get them what they need? Or, what does your team need from the workshop? Think about your next activity in the project. We're going to go into foundational design. Well, what are the inputs you need to go into foundational design? We're going to go into delivery. Okay, what are the things I need to plan my product roadmap? And so thinking about what do you need to move forward? And then how can I get participants to synthesize the outputs so that everyone has a clear direction when the event is over? So when you're planning a workshop, you're not just thinking near term, you're thinking long term so that you can build activities that can help them take the next step after the event is over. So I think I've talked about these already. So different considerations when planning a workshop, how are you going to engage activities? What tools are you going to be using? 2 items here that I haven't covered. A lot of times when we do in-person activity or workshops, we might have group breakouts. And so we're going to form, 3 small teams of, 4 people. And so how do we do this in a remote setting? Do we need to do this? So, thinking through the size of your team, and we really feel like it would benefit from having breakouts because there might be voices in the room that don't speak up as often and might benefit from that activity. And then thinking ahead of time, how are you going to break out the groups so that they're multidisciplinary and then you got key decision makers in each group? And then thinking through your technology. The way I've done this before, I think Zoom has some capabilities that help you do breakouts. I'm not as familiar with Zoom. But what we've done when we've used Microsoft Teams or some other tools like WebEx is we schedule separate sessions ahead of time, and we have the event link. And so when we're building our activities, say in Miro, we'll clearly lay out this board is for this group, and we'll say group 1, we'll list all the team members, and we'll put a meeting link in there. And you say, okay, so, we're going to go through activities, and at one point, everyone's going to stop. And so having that super clearly organized and just very clear, like for participants, okay, I got it. I'm part of group 1. This is a meeting link. And then asking participants, we're going to rejoin this main meeting link after the activity is over. Just being very clear and purposeful. Do you need a breakout, and how are you going to do it? And how do you communicate it so that no one is lost and confused about the process? And then the last piece is sending homework to participants to prepare for the workshop. As we try to shorten the length of a workshop so that you don't have participants in a long 8-hour workshop when you're sitting at home, sending homework ahead of time can help them prepare for the workshop. So that you go into an activity just having some key information filled out, or having participants gathered information from different teams internally in their organization. So they come prepared, and that activity can be really quick. And this is something that I've seen a lot of benefit from recently. I've been leading a lot of design ops workshops where I'm helping clients identify their design operations. And I've been sending homework to them ahead of time, be it through email, or I'll send in a PDF or a presentation, or I'll point them to a Miro board. And I ask them, please fill it out and come prepared for this activity. This is why we've shortened the workshop to 4 hours instead of 8 hours. And so that can be a really nice enabler for your workshop. Few strategies for preparing, setting expectations before a workshop. I always send out an email to the participants about what to expect. I share any materials or homework, and then I invite them to the tools so that they can get access. And so I'm very clear, like, we're going to be using this tool today. These are instructions on how you can install the application and run the application during the session. So being as clear as possible, sometimes more information is better, so that you kind of alleviate the anxiety or unease about, like, what are we going to be doing? Like, what are the tools? Creating a storyline through your activities. So each activity should build on one another so that you achieve the end goal of the workshop. So think about transitions. How does one activity lead into the next? Being very clear, we did this one first. This is how we're going to use that data in our second activity, and then our third activity, making sure it all builds up, and communicating what are we going to be doing, and making sure that your plan tells a coherent story of the day. This is what we're going to be doing, and this is the outcome that we're going to get out of it. And then everyone's going to feel more empowered to take action, to participate, because they understand the end goal. They're not going to be lost. Why are we doing this session? I don't understand the goal and the purpose. How does it lead to foundational design? And so being very clear, telling a coherent story is a good way to make sure that everyone is aligned and that you have transparency. Planning an icebreaker to set tone and onboard participants. This one, and I know since we're talking about Miro today, it was a new tool for us. And so getting people familiar with the tool was really important. And so the way I've been able to do this is I don't train on the tool, I run an icebreaker. And so it's an arrival activity to get people energized. And so there's a lot of websites that can randomly generate questions that you can use for icebreakers, for maybe teams that are not as familiar with each other, and what are teams that are familiar with each other, what kind of an icebreaker would you do? And so I build my activity, I have a big arrow and it says, this is the first activity that we're going to be doing today. You're going to be learning how to add a post-it, or you're going to be learning how to add a card. And in order to do that, these are the tools you're going to be using. And our first question is going to be, what was the last movie that made you cry? Or, what was the last song that you sang to yourself? And they're fun, they're light, you lighten the mood. You get people laughing, and you get people interested in using the tool and learning how to use the tool. I found a lot of benefit from doing this, and it usually takes 5 to 10 minutes at most, because some of these tools are so easy to use. But planning, how do you blend both an arrival activity like an icebreaker with tool training? Balancing group and individual activities. So this one applies to both in-person and remote. Sometimes for workshops, you might need people to go silent and start filling out an activity and then bringing it back for bigger collaboration. You could also mix groups, but think about ahead of time how you're going to mix and match so there's not confusion at the time of the workshop of who's going to be working together. Preparing materials ahead of time. Don't underestimate the time that is needed to create materials. Virtual Canvas tools like Miro make it easy to create workshop materials without needing to print and cut and package. However, it still takes time, and you really need to think about how you're going to organize everything so that it's not overwhelming and it's clear to participants. Talked about this one. So doing a dry run and rehearsing. Everyone should know what is the role that they're going to play in the meeting and when are they going to be required to provide input. It helps everyone think about ahead of time, what are their speaking points, what's the flow, before you enter the room and engage everyone. From a planning perspective, a 5-minute break means 15 minutes. So even though you might communicate to people, we're going to take a 5-minute break, in your head, you know that it's really going to be 15 minutes. So planning that ahead of time so that you don't feel like you're behind. Let people know ahead of time when a break is going to occur. So they know, okay, in 30 minutes or in 45 minutes, there's going to be a break. And sometimes you might want to ask, does anyone need a break? We have one in 20 minutes. Would anyone like to take a break sooner? And I think this is an important thing, especially for a remote environment. And then planning for the energy of the room, of the virtual room. So keeping in mind the natural flow of energy throughout the day, thinking about when are people going to have more energy, when are people going to not have enough energy. Remember that after lunch, your energy is just tanks. So think about maybe, not reading content or presenting information during the time. Maybe that's a good time to actually have a fun activity to get people re-energized. Okay, so that was the first stage. What do we do to prepare for a workshop? The next one, next section that I'm going to talk about is guidelines for workshop flow and facilitation. There are 3 main responsibilities and roles for a workshop. You've got your lead facilitator, you've got your documentarian, and you've got your team keeper and operations lead. So your lead facilitator is going to provide the context. They're going to guide discussions. They're going to conduct full group synthesis. So what that means is when I'm actually having people put information in a board, I'm going to do a recap. Okay, let me go over the things that people are saying. Oh, where do we have clusters of information? Okay, I see this theme coming up quite often. You're the main person that's guiding the conversation. You also have the documentarian. This is the person that's going to take meeting notes, going to manage the parking lot, identify action items, and capture screenshots of all activities. When we do this in person, we have photographers usually come to our workshops. Photographers as designers who are tasked to be a photographer. They have their cameras and they're taking photos of all the activities. And we do this so that, we can create presentations after that show our process. This is what we did. This is how we engaged. And photography is a great way to do that. You can do this by taking screen captures or QuickTime video captures of the activity in process. And then you want someone to be keeper. Who's that time cop that's going to make sure that you're on track with your agenda. Today, I'm going to focus on the role of the facilitator. And so as a facilitator, you're to guide, to remove constraints, and to keep energy up. So facilitation is a structured conversation, focus on the purpose, content should flow logically, connect with your audience, focus on participants as a whole. You feed the energy in the room. So great facilitation comes from passion. People sense that. People are going to sense your energy, your excitement, your passion about the topic. So make sure that you understand, like, hey, everything you do and everything you say and your excitement, it's going to be contagious. Like if you're not excited about the topic, if you're bummed out that you have to do this workshop, everyone's going to sense it. So be passionate so that people know, like, okay, this is something exciting that I need to care about. So your role as facilitator is really going to drive all the energy and passion in the workshop. and you demonstrate this through your behavior that you want other people to emulate. And so if you have an activity, you're prepared an activity, be the first one to drop in a Post-it note and fill out the activity. Be the first one to share your video. Make it okay for people to share their videos so that you can all see our beautiful faces. And it's okay if your background is messy. Not a big deal. So it's okay to bring in your dog. Be the first one to do it so that others feel comfortable emulating your behavior. Be open to critique as well. So when someone gives you critique, you might want to say like, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. So be open to that process so that everyone knows like, it's okay. It's okay that I don't have the answers. I've already seen it in action. You have to be an active listener. So fully concentrating, understanding, and then responding. Repeat what you heard. It's so important that you understand and make sense of what is being said, particularly by those who are having trouble articulating their idea. Some people have an idea, but they don't know, or it's not coming across and other people are not understanding it. Really get in there, ask clarifying questions, open-ended questions so that you really understand what is this person trying to do. And that comes from being an active listener. Make the discussion visual and assign tasks. I think this one is one where with a remote environment and having tools in front of you, this actually makes a workshop more participatory. Sometimes when we have workshops, you might have Post-it notes and that might be far from the table in the back. People might not see what's being captured. So I actually think this is a big benefit of running a workshop remotely. I've seen a lot more participation from teams, and I've seen them react to things that they see. You might capture information, but it might not have been exactly what someone said. And so by them seeing it, they can react to it quickly. As a facilitator, foster dialogue, don't just present. Repeat to clarify, keep in mind how the next activity is going to tie to what you just heard, and so that you can have a smooth transition through to the next activity. Checking the room temperature. There's many different ways that you can check the room temperature, but it's important for you to know, like, how is your team feeling engaged? And so doing this often is important, asking the questions, running an activity to see like, hey, how are you feeling? Is this valuable? Call out workshop participants also who might be more silent, and asking the room if they need a break. But constantly, and I think this is definitely harder and remote because you don't have the mannerisms, or you can't really see like, are they bored? Are they checking their phone? Are they going outside to the bathroom a lot? You can sense that in a physical environment, and you can work with it once you can see it happening, but it's harder to do that in remote. So how do you build activities or ask questions proactively so that you make sure that everyone's feeling engaged? Time activities, it's better, we have found that it's better to cut an activity short than to let it go for too long. So being able to stay on time is really important. And if you've got a timer that is visible to everyone, that helps everyone know, okay, I've only got 5 minutes to complete this activity. The time is ticking. I need to act faster. And so sometimes it's better to just cut it than to let it go for too long. And, you might need to now reschedule a workshop because you didn't get through all your activities. And then finding your own style. There is no one way to facilitate or present. You have to be yourself and just practice. Practice makes perfect. The more you do this, the more comfortable you feel working a room and talking to a room with different people. At the end of a workshop, always have closing remarks. So wrap up with Q&A, keep it very positive. Maybe you'll mention something funny that happened in the day, a favorite story that emerged, briefly summarize the process and next steps, and always thank participants and end with a very clear call to action. And the last stage when we're thinking about workshop is translating workshop results into action. And I do this often. I know this is hard for a lot of people, but it actually helps you learn and improve how you plan, facilitate workshops. And so ask for feedback. I'm very open about asking for feedback. You can create a survey, ask them to send it to via email, build an activity at the end to have people share their feedback virtually, debrief with your team, and discuss, have a mini retrospective after a workshop and say, hey, what went well, what could be improved for the future, and you always keep a note of that. But if you don't ask for feedback, you don't know how well it went, and it may be harder for you to improve. And then sending an email, a summary, and a recap. So at the end, always send an email, recap what you learned, document and share any workshop outputs, and then explain clearly what are the next steps. A few tips for structuring some of the virtual activities. These are things that, we've got a lot of strategies, but, things that you can do immediately, sharing the materials ahead of time, organizing content so that it's very clear and easy to follow, introducing the tools with an icebreaker, and using a visual timer. 4 things that you can start doing today for your next workshop. And I'm going to end with a few strategies around workshops that can help you not only in the short term when you're working remote, but when you're thinking about how do we do this in person in the future, or how do we scale and do this in the future? And there are 3 main things. Human connection is always key. You can have all the tools that you want, and they're not going to solve for the need that we have as humans to connect and to build empathy and to work on problems together. And so thinking through your activities, how am I building a sense of community and a sense of purpose and human connection in a remote environment? And I think this is a strategy that's going to help you in the short term and the long term, be it in person or remote. How are you connecting with people? Tools are not the solve of all of our problems. People are, and how we do things together. Another key strategy is a virtual canvas tool is going to promote collaboration and transparency. And even now I'm thinking, how am I going to use these workshops in a physical environment? I think they're not as great for like when we're working from our homes. I think they're also great even if we're in person together. And I definitely have seen a lot more people engaging and being able to react to the workshop information. And then for flow, just thinking of energy and paying a close attention to the energy in the room, how you're thinking through activities and building breaks. No one wants to leave a workshop feeling exhausted. You want to feel that you got somewhere far and that you made progress. And so by thinking through energy, you make sure that it's not just during the workshop where it's not a taxing activity. You make sure that it's light, but it's productive. And so these are things that can help you as designer, as collaborator, as facilitator in any type of working environment. And now I'm going to pass it on to Iris, who's going to walk us through some really cool tools in Miro that are going to help you prepare and lead workshops.
Thank you so much, Cristina. That was awesome. I know that I learned a lot while you were talking. So just so folks can kind of connect the dots between Cristina's awesome section and what we're going to be doing now, what she was able to do is provide us a lot of the methods, the skills, the best practices. And what I'd like to shift focus on is how to do that in Miro, kind of the practical application of using this remote tool. So first, brief introduction. Hello, my name is Iris. I'm now working on building out the customer insights function at Miro. So super excited to be here. Just a really brief overview of Miro. It's an online collaborative whiteboarding platform. So it's really about adding that visual element and allowing folks to collaborate using that whiteboard when you're not able to be in the same space together, which is an experience that we're all kind of going through right now. So just briefly, some key concepts. As I'm zooming out, I just want to note this is what we call the board. It's this infinite canvas. I have a bunch of content on here. I'm going to be inviting you all onto the board in just a moment, so you'll see this in real time. Miro you're able to use it on any kind of device, and it supports not only synchronous collaboration, so what you're seeing on this little video right here, folks on the board at real time, but it kind of hits on something that Cristina mentioned, is being able to take things post-workshop from creation into action. So I want to be able to focus on that a little bit as well while I go through some of my slides here too. So really briefly, I also want us to be thinking not just about the workshop experience, but Miro is really about facilitating different kinds of collaboration. So one of them is ideation and brainstorming. We saw a bunch of really beautiful photos that Cristina shared with sticky notes posted on walls and on workshop boards, right? Miro kind of tries to recreate that with these sticky notes as well, really bringing that visual element to collaboration. Another use case is research and design. Tomorrow we'll actually be co-hosting another workshop with Frog, focusing more on design sprints. So we have a few tools that I'll touch on throughout. One of them is our templates tool. It's very easy to grab a template. This is an example right here. And in connection with those post-its, using templates to guide and facilitate certain interactions. So workshops, customer journey mapping, design sprints, all of the above. Another great use of Miro, agile workflows, again, kind of based around the concept of using templates to guide facilitation and remote collaboration. We have some great PI planning templates, some interactive templates like the Kanban, and then also being able to map out dependencies. So draw out connections as you see here with these lines. So really just bringing that kind of playful visual element to facilitating a collaboration. So just a quick poll, if anyone has the chat open, I'd love to know. I have my colleague Kevin here kind of watching the chat. What kind of workshops and meetings are you running remotely right now? I'd just love to hear from the group, and maybe Kevin, if you can go off mute, you can share a few that might be coming in.
There's a slight delay, so I think folks are just answering now.
No worries. I wish I could play a little background music while we do this. That would be a fun addition. And if this is new to people, maybe some workshops and meetings that you would like to run remotely, we can kind of shift the question too.
All right, so a bunch are coming in now. So co-creation issues, empathy, discovery workshops, webinars, design meetings, daily stand-ups, design sprints, 20-second gut test, community engagement, ideation, blueprinting, Figma jam sessions, scenario customer journey mapping, user research and analysis, synthesis, lightning decision, project kickoffs, lots of things.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing, Kevin, and to the group. I'm hearing workshops and meetings that kind of span the gamut of what I've seen in the past. Hopefully, after this workshop, you'll have a few actionable tips and tricks that you can use, along with the methods that Cristina went over in her part of the presentation. So I love how, Cristina, you mentioned there's the planning and prep, there's the facilitating of the activities, and then there's translating into the action. So there's kind of this pre, during, and post, and that's how I hope to structure this conversation. So pre-workshop, it's really about designing your board, designing that experience. So what you're gonna see here, I've created a bunch of frames. This is how I'm kind of paging through my slides. They're almost behaving like slides, and I'm able to kind of toggle between them. I'm going to go over a few of these others as well, instructions, individual workspaces, locking down parts of your board. But let's page over to this frame. Right here, this is a sample of a board design. So you can use different frames on your boards that will allow you to create these different workspaces. So you see here using some title headings, right? So that folks are able to get to the right place to either participate in an activity. Over here, you have 4 different workspace frames. You could have maybe 4 different Zoom calls going on while folks are on the same board, but creating and collaborating in these different workspaces. And then you can guide everyone to the same frame where you come back to the group discussion or activity. So I just really want to note that the power of frames, especially in this huge canvas, right, where there's lots of space, it really helps to manage that content. The next activity I want to touch on is the idea of clustering. So again, we have these different Post-its. They really add that visual. It's a really nice way to get your team engaged and collaborating together. So being able to kind of drag things and cluster them based on topics or themes is another really great way to get the group engage and kind of set this up as an activity for your board. Something else that's super powerful, I'll just open up the templates tool so that you can take a look. We have, I think, pushing 200 templates available right now, but there's some building blocks templates. So the one that I'm showing right now is a matrix. We also have a new section that's all about workshop facilitation, so dot voting that I'll touch on in a moment. These are a really great jumping off point. So you see it's just built out of some shapes and some lines, but it allows you to really, let's say you do a clustering activity, and I see Kevin's already grabbing a Post-it. We can even move things from one area of the board to the other to kind of keep the communication going. And one thing to note as well, I do have Kevin on the board with me. Right up here, we have the collaborators' cursors. I'm just going to turn that on so that you can see who else is on the board. We have a few folks on here already. And I'll turn that back on when we do our activity together, because that's a really fun experience. And then the next recommendation for preparing your board is using templates like dot voting and really setting it up beforehand. So I can make sure I know, like Cristina said, know who needs to be in the workshop, the roles that they're going to play. You can really assign them those roles and then use the dot voting, for example, to get their input throughout the workshop. Something too that I think is really important, and since we will be sharing this board with you all, I just welcome you to steal this too. But for new users, we want to make sure that there's no barrier to entry, that folks can really focus on the workshop itself. So just giving some helpful tools for folks to get started. For example, press the spacebar tool to be able to edit a board is something that a new user might not know right away. So making sure that everyone is kind of on the same playing field in order to be able to participate. What really helps with that too are icebreakers. So just some games. I think Cristina gave some good examples of questions you can ask people that are fun to answer, right? So even before you get into the meat of the workshop, just setting up some games so that people can kind of easily participate, get used to using the board, and not feel like there's too much weight on the activity itself before getting into the meat and potatoes of the workshop. And then the last thing I want to mention about setting up your board is notes. So up in the upper right-hand corner, we have the notes function. And I think it's such a powerful feature. If you're going to be setting up agendas, right, you can outline schedules. Like Cristina mentioned, having homework before a workshop, having that pre-work set up can be really powerful as well. So that's all the pre-work. Now let's hop into what you do during a workshop. So going into facilitation, right? So some of the things that we might have included here are video chat and screen share. So we have the ability to see each other on the board. You can also share your screen while you're using Zoom, like we're doing right now. The cursor view, like I just showed you, I'll turn that on in a moment so it's not too distracting, but you have the option to turn that on or off. Timer is also a really powerful tool that I will be using and showing you guys all while we get on the board together. But again, time boxing, maybe there's a super loud person and you want to make sure that even the more quiet, soft-spoken people have a chance to participate by using that timer. All right, so that's kind of the during. Let's jump into the post-workshop, so the aftermath. So getting from idea to action. Again, you know, running a workshop and facilitating in real time is super fun and powerful, but what happens afterward and how do you take that and really create something afterward? So a few tools that we have right over here, you're gonna see, where is it? Here we go, sorry. So I have this Kanban that's right here on the toolbar. You can actually turn ideas into tasks and then drag them along your Kanban so that folks really are able to connect what went on in the workshop to tasks moving forward. And again, we have a few integrations that are super powerful, connecting to Jira, Rally, things like that. Another powerful tool is embedding your boards. Oh, it looks like the image didn't populate, but being able to see Miro boards in these different tools so you can have your MS Teams open with a Miro board that is editable directly from that tool. So again, it kind of facilitates ongoing collaboration even after the workshop. And then the last thing I did want to mention, here we go. Oh, thank you, Kevin. You found my image. Wonderful. So this is the kind of what it looks like within Confluence. So you have this embedded board within the Confluence page. See, I love this, the power of synchronous collaboration. Kevin helping me with my slides right now. The last thing I wanted to mention as far as getting things from creation into action is the stickies capture. Right down here, you'll see all the different apps that are available. We have the stickies capture feature. It'll pull an image directly from your laptop or from your phone. So right here, I have some physical stickies that I've created, and Miro will actually recognize the writing and translate it into text. So this is something that if you do have physical stickies in your home, on your walls, you can still take a photo of those and get them onto a board together. And I just wanted to quickly note, I know we are coming up on time, but I do hope folks are able to stay just a little bit so that we can do the group activity and answer some questions as well. So I'll make sure to breeze through the last part. The last little bit that I wanted to share was about sharing. We have several different plans available. There's free plan, paid plan, and enterprise plan. This big blue button is how you get your board in front of the right people. So right now it shows that it's shared via public link because I'm going to be sharing it with you all. But there's some different sharing options where you can share it with specific people or share it with your entire team, depending on the type of plan you have. So if you have free plan, you can share it with different team members, right? If you have a paid plan, you can also activate the guest editors, which I'll activate for you all in just a moment. And then finally, with the enterprise plan, there's a few more security capabilities that you have around protecting your content. So here are some of the takeaways that I hope you're able to take and then apply. Frames, templates, the visual notes function. And while we're kind of going through this list, Kevin, if you could drop the link to the frame in the board, we actually have an activity that I would love for you all to participate in. So Kevin in the chat is going to share a link to this part of the board. And so I have a frame here. Let me go ahead and I'm going to lock this down so we don't accidentally move it. And for folks who are able to jump on the board, let me go ahead and activate the collaborators' cursors. I'd love for you to all meet me here. What is one takeaway that you have for your next remote workshop? And you can just go ahead and grab one of the stickies and add your thoughts here. And let me go ahead and set a timer. I'm just going to set a timer for 2 minutes. If you want to create a sticky from scratch, you can totally do that. The sticky notes are over here on the left. Again, I think this is a wonderful example where a little background music would be nice.
I think it's so great to see all the people participating. This is something that in person you'd see groups of people getting together, laughing, grabbing Post-it notes, and the cursors kind of mimic that activity that might happen in a physical environment. But Iris, I think as people are filling out their questions, we've got a minute left. How about I take one of the questions from Q&A?
Fantastic. Yeah, so we have some folks over here too. Cristina, do you want to read them off of this slide while people are answering that question?
Sure.
So we have a few that I think are directed towards you, so you can answer these as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the last one, what techniques have you found successful for dealing with the loudest voices in the room, encouraging the more quiet ones? I think this is a great question. And I think as designers, it's about building that empathy with everyone in your room and paying attention to who's not speaking, who's speaking a lot, and giving opportunities to the quietest voices in the room to share their thoughts and opinions. And so a lot of times this is you calling out participants directly. And you could be like, hey, Iris, can you tell me what you think about this? I know that you've got some interesting thoughts in this area, and giving them the space and the platform to feel free to speak up. And so a lot of times that's what it means. It's, letting the people speak up, but also just calling it, because sometimes the loudest people in the rooms might be decision makers, but also calling out the quiet voices in the room.
Wonderful. I have one here that I can read aloud. So when freelancing or working on smaller projects, I work in a team of one. So you play multiple roles such as the facilitator, documentarian, and timekeeper. What are your tips for hosting a workshop by yourself? Oh, that's such a powerful question. Just from a Miro perspective, I think having this notes function can be super helpful. But I also am a big proponent for recording my sessions, of course, after getting permission from people. But it allows me to be fully present, and then I can always review after and take the notes that I need afterward. I don't know, Cristina, if you have anything else to add there.
No, I think those are great. And I think this timekeeping tool that's so easy to get that, on the board and visible to everyone, that's just going to help you as a one-person show.
Oh, that's the sound of the timer. Let me close that out. Do you want to answer one more, Cristina, and then we'll shift back over to the...
Sure. Well, I would actually like to read, what are people responding to in the Q&A?
Great.
The other activity that we had.
That sounds great. So I'm going to shift back over here. Oh my gosh, I see some people are adding some awesome takeaways. Thank you all for doing that. That's such a powerful, and I see that there's almost 60 people on the board together. That's awesome. So let's go ahead and, shall we shift over to the other activity, or did you want to focus on this one?
No, let's wrap it up. I know we're over time.
Yeah, no worries. So I'm just scooting over to the right here, folks. There's one more frame. If you're able to just spend one last minute, I would love to know what this workshop experience was like for you, things that you liked, and things that maybe you wish we'd done or might do in the future. So again, getting that feedback, like Cristina mentioned, we really appreciate your feedback, both positive and constructive. So again, Kevin, if you want to share the link to this frame, folks who are on the board, you can also just kind of scoot over to the right where I am on the board. So I see a lot of people are still in the same frame. You can just shift over to the right, and there we go. Everyone's kind of swimming back over here. This is awesome. And I have, again, some stickies ready for you. And let me quickly go ahead and lock this frame because I forgot to lock it. There we go.
So I think as people are completing this activity, we really value your feedback. Thank you for joining our session today. It really means a lot to both of us. And we hope that we were able to provide you with some valuable information and strategies that can help you with design, with workshops, with planning. It was a pleasure to participate in this conference, and I think this link could probably stay live for a little bit longer, and we encourage everyone to participate. So thank you everyone for the opportunity and the platform.
Yeah, thank you so much.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. And you were definitely correct. I think the ending was perfect with seeing all 60 plus people on the file together collaborating. Well,
and it's still going on.
Yeah.
I loved all the advice about keeping people engaged in workshops, even when it's remote, because I feel like that's so much harder to gauge when you're not all right there. So I really appreciated that advice.